We live with episode 3 of Behind the Minds. Today's episode, we have the wonderful, the man
Oh.
himself, Ike from Ike's Tech Talk. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you, man?
Good. You know, I almost messed up your name. I wanted to put it as like Ike Talks Tech for some reason because there's all of those channels that
Everybody
are
does
all
that
Talks
too.
Tech, and I'm like,
Everybody
nope,
does. Man,
that's.
everybody does. So it wouldn't have been the first time, but it's all good, man. But appreciate you for having me, first and foremost. Appreciate the opportunity, man. Thank you.
I appreciate you jumping on. I know you have family and stuff, and my thing was like, at least with my wife, when I've had other people invite me on, if it can do it like the same night as I'm already going, at least it only
Hmm.
takes like one night of the week.
That's literally, it was
So I
perfect.
was
Like,
like,
I
I'm
literally
gonna
talked
hit
to the
him up. It's right
missus.
before your stream. I'm
Yeah, I
like, I
literally
know it's a
talked to the
little early, but
missus. Yeah, I talked to the missus and she was like, "Yeah, it's just an hour." So of course I was like, "All right, cool." So we're good. We're good, man. She's helping
none of
out with
those.
the little ones tonight.
I remember, what was it? When my son was first born, I think it was Viper was doing a stream or somebody was doing a stream, and I
Hmm.
had like my stream, and then somebody else invited me on in between. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a long
Oh
night, but I'm already
wow,
set up. I ended up on. It was like 4.5 hours between all the different.
good
Because I had my
grief!
own
Oh,
for
so
like
you
an
were going
hour,
for
and then
the
somebody else was in between, and then Vipers went long, and it was like an unusual. It was one of the times where he did like he was streaming every day or something. It's crazy.
that's wild. He was on forever and ever and ever and ever.
Some of those, some of those
It'd be
are
worth it
crazy
though,
though.
cause a lot of the time, man, a lot of the time, it'd be a lot of good conversation. So I'm definitely always down to chop it up, whether it's a little bit inside of tech, a little bit outside of tech. So it's always good conversation, for the most part. So that's what's up.
So, first question for you, which is kind of my typical
Let's
question
go.
for everybody, is what is your daily like 9 to 5 job?
So right into it. So I am a supervisor at a IT firm. I can't
Okay.
say exactly what client we
Yep.
we
Yep.
host,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
yeah, well we have a client and yeah, pays very well. I like my job. Let's just say
Awesome.
that.
So, is that what got you into tech, or were you like into
Oh
it before?
man.
Or
Yeah, so I've been into tech well before I could actually afford tech. The earliest memory that I have of like a piece of tech that like really like inspired me to like want to talk about it, that I was passionate about it, was the original T-Mobile Razor. The original T-Mobile Razor. My dad, who it's funny because he went from being like someone who loves new smartphones and stuff like that to now he's like super tech illiterate. So it's hilarious, that whole switch. But he bought one home. He bought one and he brought it home and he was like, here, you can check it out. And I just remember like the feeling of just like, yo, like this is just so different, so innovative, so just like I said, just different, and it really grabbed me. And then he did it again when he brought the T-Mobile G1, which was the first Android phone or whatever. So yeah, I've been in a tech since I can remember, dude. I just got the means to be able to afford my addiction. Is
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So,
let's
I
talk
know
about
that
it.
you've kind of had your Ike's garage sale of devices running up lately, but
Yeah,
so
yeah.
what devices are you currently using, holding on to?
Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. A lot of people can't tell because they're like, dude, you're always all over the place. One day you're talking about the phone, next day you're talking about the iPhone, then it's the Pixel. So for me right now, like my everyday, so I obviously edit with Final Cut. So I run a MacBook Air, M1 MacBook Air. My desktop setup for live streaming and things like that is a pre-built HP Omen 30L. My mobile or my tablet, Galaxy Tab S8 Ultra, and then my phone that I'm currently running daily, Xiaomi 12s Ultra. So rocking the Xiaomi 12s Ultra. This is what's in my pocket. It's been in my pocket for at this point daily as the only phone about a week. So about a week, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Watch TicWatch Pro 3. So I had to go back to the TicWatch Pro 3 because Samsung's third-party app for some reason will not work with like import devices when normal Wear OS watches will. So I don't know.
Yeah, I tried that with mine too. I wanted to run that with my, Vivo, and I was like, it lets
Dude,
you install that,
same.
but you can't install the extension that they require. That's
Yeah.
what caught me up. I was like, so then you just can't the plugin, I mean. Yeah, the plugin, that's
Yeah,
what caught me up. I was
for Vivo, I was able to do it with my Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. I was able to do it with that, but it was really inconsistent. Like it would like disconnect kind of randomly, and then I would go back and reconnect it, would disconnect again. Then I had one time overnight where like it disconnected, and when I went to go and like reconnect, it was just completely unpaired, and I had to go through the whole painful process all over again. So yeah, it's one of those things. If you want that watch in particular, you got to stay with domestic, unfortunately. But the Pixel Watch that should work with it theoretically. If I'm, it's just should be normal Wear OS, so that should work. So it's another reason why I will 100% be grabbing the Pixel Watch.
Yeah, because Samsung, some of their stuff is like their individual proprietary connection, like the health
Hmm.
app, and then there's different versions depending on where you are in the world too that have
It's
like
so
different features.
much.
Is weird to me. They should just. I get it because as of like the current state of stuff, where Google's health stuff is fairly decent, it's kind of limited. It's kind of like the idea of how like Pixel OS, right? You have like the basic of things, and if any
Hmm.
company uses like cameras beyond what kind of Google optimized for, or like certain features beyond, they have to have their own versions of their on top
Yeah,
of it, their own apps and stuff. So I get the same kind of, but at the same time, it's like I can't use like the
so
blood pressure thing
frustrating.
unless you're gonna fork in like the APK for their own, and it's just kind of a
Yeah,
mess. And
it's
I
it's
don't.
so
So
weird to me.
is that the regular TicWatch or
Yes,
is it the Ultra one?
I don't have the Ultra. I have the original TicWatch Pro 3. I've had it for years at this point. So I've had the TicWatch Pro 3. I was looking at the Ultra, but in all honesty, it just wasn't enough of a jump for me. I really was hoping that they'd add wireless charging, like just normal Qi wireless charging. So we still don't have that, and a better haptic motor. A lot of the people that I know that have the Ultra said like the haptics got a little bit better, but haptics are still very mediocre or meh from Mob Voice. So we'll see what they do this year.
I was one of the unfortunate ones that had the issue with the TicWatch Pro 3 GPS, the mouthful name title there.
Oh
That had the
yeah,
issue with the sensors where my sensors
I
just
didn't
stopped
have
working and
that.
I couldn't I reset it, I did all sorts of things and they're gone. They don't light up, nothing. So
That's
that
crazy.
was
So like
unfortunate.
anything regarding sensors, like it just wasn't reading at all.
Mm-mm.
That's wild, bro. Yeah, no,
So
I
part of me
didn't.
was like
That was
tempted
a
to
thing.
use it just for like the fact that it has the crazy good battery life and just the apps and stuff,
That's
and then
that's what
have
the
a like
draw
a
was for
straight up
me.
just tracker for the for or straight up
Oh, for
like
the fitness
for the health
side,
stuff for like the
yeah,
heart rate stuff. Just have
you can
something
do
I use
that.
just for when I was doing that. But I was like, so I tried using the Galaxy Watch and Apple Watch
Mhm.
like one on each arm at the
At the
same time,
same
and I
time,
just I couldn't do it. It threw me off. I don't know. My
I've
wife's
never.
right-handed, but she wears her watch on her right wrist, and I was like, I can't do it. I
I
don't. It
can't
throws
do
me
that.
off.
Even like flipping it, it still just seems off to me. Like even like flipping it, it still doesn't work. I don't know why. I'm just not a fan of like rocking two at the same time. It's like whatever I'm testing is kind of whatever I'm like full force going into. But I'm really waiting for the Pixel Watch, man. I'm really hoping that that joint comes with like full support because I'm curious and like I said, I'm not sure if Samsung has to like fully build out compatibility or something like that when it comes to their watches working with devices that aren't Samsung, but like any of my domestic Android phones, like my Surface Duo 2, when I had that, paired no problem. My Pixel, no problem. So I don't know if they have to like, do something a little extra or whatever, or maybe there's something in just like the global version or US version of these of Android that, the Chinese ROMs don't have. I'm just not honestly not sure. It's really, really
I,
weird.
I wonder if it's the way that your Google services load in, that they load in different, because it's kind of like
Okay.
on top of, because I had to reset my Vivo recently, and then I had to go through the whole fun thing, and I used, what's the within the Google app, I actually
Hmm.
where you can use your camera and do the translate Google Lens, and then I did the
Okay.
translate to get through back through all the
Oh,
because it's
the
all
like the
Chinese until you
Chinese.
get into the actual operating
Yeah,
system, and then you could go to
that's
English,
wild.
and then had to reinstall the. Basically, I went and installed like Gboard, and that didn't for some reason didn't prompt the thing. So I installed Chrome, and then it prompted me to install the Play services. And then,
Mm,
so I wonder if it's the way that it loads, because it's kind of like it's loading on
yeah,
top and not like built into the actual version of Android that they're
that's a
using.
good point. That's a good point. That's a good
Although, I
point.
mean, when you get Play services updates, it's not like you get a whole operating system update. So that kind of throws
That
that
is a
kind.
good
I'm not
point.
really sure what there's got to be
Yeah,
something in there. It's kind of like
yeah.
how um apps will let you do split screen and the top to bottom stuff on Samsung on like their foldables,
Hmm.
but when the other ones are like side by side, and even if they have the top to bottom support, most of the apps when you go to click it, it's like this app doesn't support it. This app, like none of the apps.
That just bugs
So
me
there's
so much, man.
some special
Like
thing that Samsung does that force
that, I
overrides this
guess.
stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I'm really curious if it'll be different if you use like a global version of that device. Like if Xiaomi would have dropped a global 12s Ultra, like would that have paired with no problem? Because I mean, obviously, I haven't seen what Xiaomi's doing in terms of like their watches and stuff like that, but still, like when it comes to like Wear OS on Android, 110%, I'd still think the Galaxy Watch 5 Pro is probably the best way to go. But like I said, I mean, next year, supposedly, and I guess spoiler alert for my stream later, but supposedly the CEO of Xiaomi confirmed next year 13s Ultra will 100% be global. So I don't think I've ever been more excited for a release that's like a year away because I'm ready to get my hands on that thing global. Like if I would buy a whole nother one of these if they came out with a global version, 100%.
That brings into another discussion of,
Mm-hmm.
we talk about the whole I'm not going to do iOS versus Android, but people talk about
Mm-hmm.
how like Apple's locked in, but then there's some of this kind of lock-in that goes on with, and I kind of start to understand why people don't necessarily experiment with, because if they are the type of person that like I want a smartwatch, but I want it to be a tracker and I want all these features, that like you kind of get stuck with if it's uh, with the exception of like Mi bands and some of the stuff that get pretty good.
Yeah.
But like if you want the full on app notification feature, you kind of get limited with your choice, even with like TicWatch stuff, like you said. And so
Mm-hmm.
like unless you're carrying two phones, which
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, and that's why like I always say, like I get people's fear whenever the whole conversation of like the Apple ecosystem and being locked in comes into place. Like I'm someone who was heavily into that and just recently kind of broke out of it. But it's like you have pros and cons on both sides because when it comes to compatibility and things like that, you don't have to worry about that. Like before I picked up my 12s Ultra, I didn't know if it was gonna pair with my Galaxy Watch. Like I didn't know. I had to take that risk because no one that I knew that had, the 12s Ultra also had a Galaxy Watch 5. So it's like one of those things where, yes, when it comes to lock in, it can be a little tough. But if you can survive and be afloat within that ecosystem, there's a ton of pros. You don't got to worry about things being compatible because everything's coming from one manufacturer. It's all going to be compatible with each other. So like I said, even with that, I try not to be too, on one side, I like to try to stay, as middle ground or neutral as possible. But there's definitely pros and cons to that conversation for sure. For sure.
now that there's kind of I mean, it's always been there, but they called it something else. You used to have
Mm-hmm.
Android Beam, right? Now we have like the Google sharing method, and then Samsung has their own version. You have Quick Share, and you
Mm-hmm.
have there's the two different. I can't I always forget
Quick
which is what. But
share,
anyway,
you got nearby share,
nearby
quick
share.
share, like yeah, it's like different
So
standards from different manufacturers. Xiaomi even has their own, like it's like Mi Share or something like that. It's like everybody has all these shares. It's like, oh my god. Yeah.
but since Google is kind of doing their own default version of that,
Mm-hmm.
on the side of like Samsung, how they have their where you can do calls and text on another device. Do you think that we'll
Mm-hmm.
see that be brought into like a default way? Because my thing right now is because that's the case, it's like if you're the type of person that uses one more than one device, you really
Mhm.
have to stick with one company's ecosystem in a way because it's not really that like you, the Pixel doesn't have that syncing up that native. If you like a Pixel but you want an Android tablet, and so you can buy a Samsung tablet, or there's like no, Lenovo is coming out
Yeah,
with some pretty good stuff, but you don't really
I
have. Do you think that that's like the next step is kind of to build in that?
I've talked about this. I think it was with Galen actually, and we were talking about that, and we were saying that we would love to see Google take, because Google's talking a lot more about ecosystem and things like that. What I would love to see is Google take their particular apps, like when we can just talk specifically about messages, but like take messages and literally turn into something that's tied to your Google account. I don't know how that would work with how RCS and all that stuff. I guess I just don't know like the technical aspect. But if they had like that full iMessage equivalent, and not in terms of the feature set, but in terms of how it works, like with iMessage, I can be signed into a Wi-Fi iPad, with iMessage. But when it comes to like my Tab S8 Ultra, it's like, yes, I can use the whole caller text on other devices, and it has like a little messages app kind of built in, but it's pretty much the same as the whole web page version. Like the fact that I can't have say two Android phones, have one of them as like the main, and then the second one just sync up the threads like I would on if I had two iPhones. That is what I want Google to do. But allow us to do like build it into Android to where it works across all of your Android devices. Doesn't matter if it's Pixel, Samsung, whatever. Like that, in my opinion, is like their next step. At least the next step that they should take, in my opinion. Like make that whole experience just more seamless.
What what I don't understand is when I go into and I check what well they call it Google Chat now, and you
Yeah.
enable that, and in the little subtext it says something about if you're on Google Fi, basically,
Mhm.
you can, so if you have like, there must be something different in the way that it works, but they have to have the technology in the background and like the development already in place. Because apparently, if you're on Google Fi, you can do that where you can have it where you have things sync through like that, and you just have like one number assigned as your. But I don't know if that's because Google's
See,
hosting the service and it's something with the carrier stuff because it's still
I was
through a phone
thinking
number.
that.
It's just using, and your phone number is synced up to your Google account, so it's not really using
Hmm.
your Google account yet.
It's
But the
using the
same thing,
phone
like,
number.
but the thing that's crazy to me is like, if I was the type of person that, let's say, I'm like, you know what, I use RCS with everybody. I'm an Android user and I got my first iPhone. I could go on my
Hmm.
iPhone and just go to the, messages.google.com or whatever, scan the QR code from like my
Yep.
Android device, and then just save that as like a web app on my home
And
screen,
then you can
and
just
just like
open it like
take
a normal app.
iMessage and just move it to somewhere
I've
else and just
literally
use
done
that.
that. I've literally done that.
But what I don't get is if they can do that, they should just put that into an app. But maybe I don't know if Apple doesn't. I can't imagine that Apple can block them. There's Facebook
Yeah,
Messenger, there's
I was
WhatsApp
just
and
gonna say
stuff.
that.
Unless their
I
thing
was
is
just gonna
like,
say
oh,
Facebook
because
Messenger.
it's a something that's built into like
Hmm.
as an as SMS connection. If that's like a violation of the, but it's not because it's not SMS on that device. You still have to have another device for it to access, and it's just a
It
web
gets
app
really
instead of
touchy.
having to go to a website and do it. But then again, it's like, I guess if it's just as easy for, like, if somebody knows about that, they're probably just going to go to the website and do it. Like I've done that from my iPad.
Yeah.
I've done that from my, and the advantage that I've heard, and of course, is like with iMessage, if I had a work Mac, I
Mhm.
can't use because you got to be signed in on the same. But I could
The
hop on
same
that
Apple
Mac and like
ID.
scan a QR code and have my Pixel or my
That's a good
whatever
point too. I
messages
didn't even
show
think
up,
about
and
that. That's a
then you
really
can
good
just
point.
leave when you're done, and it goes away. You could be on the
Hmm.
library on their computer and technically
And
sync it
text
up, and then
messaging and
the texting, and then just
everything.
when you're done, go away.
But that's a very
Um,
good point though, because I didn't even think about that. You do have to be signed into you do have to be signed into your Apple ID, the same Apple ID. So that's a very good point. I never thought about that.
I'd like to just see them like, but I wonder if it has to do with because somebody said Google Fi disables RCS though. I don't
Hmm.
like.
I'm not
So
sure
there
about
there
that.
has to be a way that, because RCS can be profile hosted, like I know that like the carrier can have their own profiles to
Hmm.
host it, or there's like the um what's the it's the one that Google, like if you bring an imported device that's hosted through what's it called?
Oh, I've used it on. I even have it set up on this, but I cannot remember for the life of me, man. Let me see
But
something.
yeah, it's
But
hosted
I know what
through
you're
the
talking about, though.
Barry universal profile, the carrier profile. It's true,
Yeah.
but like, so there's the separate profiles. So then there's this discussion of like Apple with RCS, and I don't want to get into it because we've already done this. You know, you've talked about it a lot, but just a little bit
Hmm.
like on this kind of topic of where we are is like, so Apple could host their own profile for it, but at the
Hmm.
same time, like, does Google say, well, if Apple's going to host it, we still need to have connection, and that's why Apple's like
Have
saying
access
no,
to it.
because we
No.
don't want our customers giving, like, if they sign in and they sign into iMessage,
Hmm.
that they know iMessages are only through us, and you could disable SMS, right? So you could literally have it so your iPhone can only send iMessages if you wanted to for some reason. You know, if
Hmm.
everybody you message with only uses that, and you want to make sure that like if there's a connection issue, it won't send through because you don't want the whole issue with lack of privacy and security and stuff. So I don't know if there's something on Google's end where they're like,
Yeah,
well,
it
but you
has
got
to
to let us
be.
has access every once in a while, or like the issue of like Apple can't guarantee the access at the other end because once it goes through that server and goes to, they don't know. So it could go through their server, but then when it pings through, it could end up going through another company's server because maybe the other person has a different profile set up and they can't guarantee the end to
It would
end.
get
Like
real
there could be some
complicated.
interesting. But my thing is, if Google just said, we're not hosting it, and the FCC said like there's
Hmm.
this company that's hosting it, and um, they can't turn anything over to like FBI. You know, there's no, it can't be, it's separate. Nobody has access to it. It's not the government that has access to it. It's not any carrier or OEM. It's some third party company.
Hmm.
The thing would be
That's an
trust. Like, are you
interesting.
going to trust some company you've never heard
Yeah,
of?
because
Like,
like you've
because the
never heard
reason
of
people
them.
buy an iPhone is because they trust Apple. People reason,
Exactly. It's
and
like
same
that
thing with
with any
Samsung and
company.
Google and all that. But
Yeah.
like to then be like, here's this third party company that's handling it
That
all,
you
so you
don't
don't have
even
to worry
know.
about, is going to be a trick.
Yeah.
So
To be honest, they probably, I'm gonna be honest, like most, and I know we talk average consumers, even though we're not average consumers, they honestly wouldn't care. Like they honestly wouldn't care. I think it would just be a situation where like, and not even trying to bring up the whole RCS thing or whatever, but like I said, in the end, I feel like as long as they go to text and send that message to whoever it is and it gets there and their pictures don't look like garbage, I think they're perfectly fine. Perfectly fine.
what I don't get is why Apple can't just do something that like, okay, so you send me a message, right, from
Hmm.
your Android device, and you're sending it to my number, or yeah, and that Apple can't just do something in there and they wouldn't even have to have a separate RCS thing. It just goes and says, oh, that person's sending something that supports RCS and converts it to whatever profile stuff
That
iMessage
would
is
be
using,
dope.
and then the other way
That
around.
would be
So
dope.
iPhone users wouldn't even notice, and Android users wouldn't even have to. There'd be like a middle in between, like a translation thing. I don't know if that's
And
not possible. And then the other thing
yeah,
is like there would still have to be something that's then accessing like pinging to your device to know that you're using
mhm.
RCS, and like pinging to mine to know like in the middle of the conversation of stuff. But I guess
I
when you first
think
set it up and you send something, it would know that.
yeah,
But then again, it would be like, okay, what device is that person that you'd have to have a separate thing that was like, if it's going to another Android user that doesn't do that. But at the same time, eh, they all have to know what method they're using because
yeah, like in
otherwise,
some way, shape, or
how
form.
does
How
it
do they
know?
know to
Like if
go
you
SMS or MMS? Like how does it know?
or
Yeah, I
RCS, like on
agree.
the Android side still, because I could disable RCS or have a device that doesn't support it, so it still has to know
True.
like what
I think
communication
that
method.
I think it's very possible, man. I think what it all comes down to is if Google and Apple are willing to sit down and come to some type of agreement. Because I do think that it would be something that has to be looked at on both sides. I don't think any one side could kind of just figure it out, because if Google could just figure it out on there, and they would have already done that. And it's not in Apple's best interest from a business decision to sit down and try to figure out that problem. Like, I'm not trying to bash Apple, because from a business perspective, I respect it 110%. It's far more profitable for that iPhone user to say to his Android cousin or Android, sibling, hey, if you bought an iPhone, our videos wouldn't look like garbage. Pictures are usable. Me and the missus send pictures back and forth, but videos, yeah, no, you can hang that up. So it's like, I definitely do think that it could happen. I don't think it will, strictly because and this isn't just an Apple thing. I honestly, I challenge everyone to think outside the box and maybe change your perspective. Put Google in Apple situation. Do you think that Google would have that same, you know what I mean, energy if they were the ones that were kind of, had the crown in terms of communication, at least here in the United States? So I don't know. I challenge people to think that way too. I'm not saying that Google would or wouldn't. Honestly, we'll never know, because they're not going to be. But I think it would be. I think it's interesting nonetheless. So yeah, I don't think we're going to see anything like that for a long time. A long time.
Imagine if Apple went and said, we have our own messaging iCloud, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
have like Apple TV, and we're gonna expand, and we're gonna allow users to create their own content.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna call it, and we are gonna have like Apple Tube or whatever their equivalent would be, that's
Mm-hmm.
hosted through, and like you go through your Apple TV account and you can sync all your stuff up and you can see it and you can go online, and like if you're a music producer, who likes to create your own music, you can, or do podcasts. I mean, they kind of already do that, but like, let's say they're gonna
Mm-hmm.
do all this stuff, right? And they say, but Google, we want you to help us so that like our coding is done right, and like somebody can
Mm-hmm.
easily host it to ours and YouTube. Google's incentive wouldn't really be any incentive to make it easier to
And to be
communicate between the
honest,
two and stuff either.
Google isn't innocent with a lot of stuff. So I'm not even. Like I said, I don't see brand loyalty when I see these companies. I see products, and if I like that product, and I'm keeping it real, there's been times where Google has been super slow with things, bringing things to even iPhone, like picture in picture in the YouTube app. Picture in picture has been in the YouTube app on Android for years. And iPhone users just got it this year, like officially, like not in the beta, but officially. I think they just got it this year. So
Google
I
had to Yeah,
like,
Google had
man,
to give up on the whole like, so they can't put it behind a paywall, so they can't make it so it's only available for premium customers, which is what they're doing. And then for a bit, if you went as a Safari, you could do it no matter what. But then they
yeah,
stopped that because
limit you to 720.
they
Well,
didn't want free.
that, and then they also limited you to 720p when you did that. So it's like you
Yeah,
had to watch a downscaled version to be able to do picture in picture. It just was like, no, you guys need to bake it in the real app, and they eventually did. So I don't know. I honestly think we'll see pigs fly though before we see Apple try to support something in terms of making communication between their devices and Android devices better. Like, people like to say, oh, well, they did FaceTime. It's like, okay, yeah, but iMessage is that bread and butter, and it's one of those things. Like, and I'm sure, like I said, even the business owners that we have in the tech community, like Easy or LB, if they have a product, you know what I'm saying, on their end, and they're killing the game, there's no incentive for them to reach out to not a lesser brand, but a smaller brand from that respect, and try to make something work between them two. Like, there's no reason for them to. So from a business perspective, like, why? But Jason has a really good question. He says, do you think security will eventually push Apple into RCS since SMS isn't? And I guess I'll kind of just go first because I'm already on a rant, I guess. But I don't think it has anything to do with security, Jason. I think that 110%, like most decisions made by people in these corporate offices, it's fueled by that money, like 100%. If it was about security, as soon as RCS kind of was even something that could be adopted, Apple would have already adopted it if it was really about security. So no, I don't think it's about security. I honestly think it comes down to price, money. It's far more lucrative to say, hey, go buy that iPhone so we can send good videos or whatever, and keep it moving. But go ahead, MPT. I cut you off. My bad.
my other thought on that would be, like right now I don't have to own an iPhone. I could buy a MacBook Air, and like let's say I'm
Hmm.
a student and like other people I know are going to use iPhones and stuff, and they're using iMessage, and I can iMessage with those people, or an
Hmm.
iPad, even like a cheapest iPad, or like I could have like a 10-year-old MacBook and load up iMessage,
And
and it
still
still
iMessage. Yep.
works. And that's the crazy thing to me, where like if they bring in RCS, for example, like you have to have an iPhone to send SMS to people. Like you can't,
Hmm.
like it links through that way, as far as I know.
Hmm.
Like you can't
No,
just
no,
have an
it
iPad.
does.
Like you
You're
have to
right.
have that. And even as of, it took what, about a year ago for Apple to bring it so that like if your iPhone was off, for it wouldn't work. Like your
Oh
iPhone
yeah, it
had to
wouldn't
actually be
work.
on
I
for it to
remember
still, and
that.
they disabled all that. And part of it was with the watch stuff, because like if you
Yeah.
leave your watch at home or it dies and like your watch is your backup, like what are you gonna do for your, and like even the same thing with emergency calls. So my question is, with all of that, if you think about it, right now, the way RCS
Mhm.
is working, no company is really running RCS across like all devices in a way that Apple would have to change iMessage to do. There's not like, for
That's
example,
a
like
good
if you buy
point.
all Samsung stuff, yeah, it's sort of doing it, but it's forwarding it through. But it's not like
Yeah, it's forwarding
there's
it through.
like it's not like
It's
a
like,
messages app on your Samsung tablet
hmm,
and your Samsung computer and your Samsung phone and your Samsung watch that are all
hmm,
doing their own unique thing. Where like on the Apple side, while the ecosystem is important, there is some individuality there as
hmm,
well. And I mean they could do it. I think they're also waiting for more stability on the
hmm,
RCS side, because there's still some, and if it's just gonna still fall back to SMS and R and MMS, then their thing is, well, this, it being entirely secure kind of goes away on, and
hmm.
some of the, plus they probably have numbers. They probably have numbers. It's like, maybe 3% of all the communication ever goes through SMS, MMS, at most, and that's the highest across the world or something, and so their
Yeah,
numbers aren't
from
affected
iPhone to
enough to have to,
Android.
that's, or people are just using another. But one thing that I don't get, so I'm watching the live stream and this is my iPhone, and
Hmm.
oh, if I can get it to focus, of course it's being dumb.
There
So
you
you
go.
notice how like I bring up the chat and
Hmm.
it's the same. Let's see if I can pull it up here. Obviously, make sure it's muted. What I don't get is when I do the same kind of thing
Hmm.
on my Android, watch what happens when I click on chat. How the video goes dark.
Mm.
That's been one of my issues
Yeah,
with,
that is a
and like
little
with,
weird.
and like Dex too. Been one of my
I've never
holdoffs from
noticed that.
using that all the time. Like, whether you're, so in Dex, when you have like the YouTube app open and like let's say Twitter or Chrome or whatever beside it, and
Hmm.
you go to type in the chat, it brings it really dark. So if you're trying to interact with it, it's like poof, and then it takes up a huge chunk of it. If you use just if you use the YouTube website,
Hmm.
then it bumps up the video so high in order to be able to see your line where you're typing, or
Oh, it's
cuts off
like
half the
super
like half
mini.
the.
Yeah,
So
I've
that
seen
this has
that.
been my, so why do companies not prioritize their own, like, I mean, I guess it's not Google's own because Google doesn't have like a desktop mode on their own device. But like even
Yeah.
then, like why does Samsung, because as big as they are, why do they not have some sort of pressure or enticement, or even developing their own version of the app? Maybe somehow, they could do it.
Hmm.
It's just it would be just a skin and it would be pulling in the, but like, why do they not prioritize having that work more seamlessly and not have the
Hmm.
interruptions and not have like the change in the darkness of the view, and like pushing it up over like on an iPad or an iPhone. Like I can do that same split. I can do split screen on my iPad, and when I
Hmm.
bring it up, yeah, it brings up a big on-screen keyboard if you do it that way.
Giant
But like if I'm
keyboard, but
using wireless Bluetooth and keyboard, it doesn't darken it. It doesn't change your experience, your
yeah, I've never
visualization,
noticed
your,
that until you said it. But that's a good point. That's a good point. There are a lot of instances that I think Google has better like integration with like with Apple products than with like their own products, and not even like their own products, but like with other Android devices. But yeah, I don't know. That's really really weird though. I've never noticed that until you just said it. But it might be because I haven't been on my iPhone in a while now, so that might be why. But
That's the and then I had this thought and I was wondering what your thought on this would be. So
Hmm.
when we have you have the flip device,
Hmm.
right? And then you have the fold, and when you're on YouTube and you do this thing, it brings like so it's all centered nicely there, and your
Hmm.
chat's down at the bottom, and you can scroll through it. Why they don't just put that same UI on like a non-folding device? Because it'd be so nice to be able to like scroll
Because
up
it
in the
doesn't,
chat and not
yeah,
have it push your video
have it
up
push everything
on
up.
a
Yeah.
on a regular
I
phone.
don't.
Like
I don't know. And if anyone was gonna do it, I would say Samsung would probably do it because a lot of the times, like the software stuff like that, like you said, like they did the whole flex mode. So I don't know, man. It's really weird that that's even a thing. Like I would think that something that simple would be parallel between both platforms, but I digress, man. I digress.
I'm still confused about the whole trackpad thing. Like it was cool on like the LG Wing because you had like the trackpad, you could have a trackpad down below and
Oh,
the
yeah,
side by
in
side.
flex
But now
mode.
that like in flex mode, if the app doesn't really support it, they just have the weird trackpad thing, and yeah, you can control your volume and your brightness and bring down your
It's
notification. But
like
like on the flip,
fun,
that's a really
but
weird like
yeah, it's one of those things. Like it's cool for somebody there that may like want to show off or look cool or whatever, but it's not something that I personally ever use. Like now,
the
flex mode, I use flex mode a lot, but that trackpad whole interface, no, I don't. I don't do that. Me personally,
the only thing I could think about would be accessibility. Like if you have a really
that
hard
could be a
time
good
with
one
like
too.
where you could just literally just hold your finger and just kind of
Hmm.
and you don't even have to necessarily be somebody that can hold it still because you're just moving, a little bit at a.
That's a good point too. I didn't think
I even
about
had
that.
a thought when people talking about like the side mounted fingerprint sensor, right? Like you get
Hmm.
the advantages of it's really nice. You don't have to look for it. You don't even have to be looking at the device. And, I can just go like this and like literally
I
hand my phone off to my wife. Like if I'm driving, I can unlock it and hand it, right? But
yeah.
here's one thing I had a thought about with like the under display is if you have somebody who has a disability where like they shake a
Hmm.
lot, yeah, you got to hold it there for a minute, but like on screen you can just kind of touch on the screen real quick and
On
take
the
the
screen,
side. Like if you're having a hard time with dexterity, this holding it to
like
get to the side. So I kind of get the reasons for both. Sometimes I wish devices would just do both so you could like
have
unlock
like
it and then
each end. Yeah, I think that that would be a good solution. Probably be expensive, but like for me, I've always been in the minority when it comes to fingerprint sensors. I personally love the under display, front facing under display fingerprint sensors. I know that's super contrarian of me, but I am a big fan of them. I have my phone sitting down on my desk, like just face up a lot. And if the fingerprint sensor is on the back, well, then I got to pick up my whole phone to unlock. And I know people are like, oh, you could just use smart lock and set it to your home Wi-Fi and this, and that, and the third. But it's like even if I like go out and I'm sitting at a restaurant, like my phone is just sitting down with the face up. So instead of having to pick my phone up and unlock it, kind of this way, or kind of like either do like my weird kind of claw where I'm trying to unlock it with the fingerprint, I like to just, sit in there, just boom, right? And I know like a lot of people say it's not as fast and things like that, but I think the ultrasonics and even especially the ultrasonic max, that new one that Vivo is really using. But even like the optical one on the 12S Ultra is more than fast enough. Like more than fast enough. Yeah, like it's instant. Like I can't
that's
see like
that's crazy
how
to me. Like the Vivo one is crazy to me.
it's
That
so fast, bro. It's so fast. So like for me, like the convenience of not even having to pick my phone up, like I don't have to pick it up. I don't have to reach across the side and touch the fingerprint sensor. Like, and then like on the fold, the fingerprint, like the side mounted one, it's like ever so slightly recessed. So you have to kind of like feel like if you're trying to do it without looking, like you got to kind of feel for it. Whereas the under display, I just touch and I'm in. Done. I don't know. That's really just it's a me thing now. It's 100% a me thing. It's a me thing.
Yeah, that's one thing. But also, I noticed that so like some of the cases on the fold, you're talking, some
Hmm.
of the case like the pen cases especially make it where the pen
Really, you
sticks
gotta
out from the
like dig
side.
your
Then
yeah, you dig your
you
finger
gotta
in
if you're
there.
left-handed, you have to flip the
You're
device weird
screwed.
to unlock it with your thumb.
Yes.
But one
So,
thing I like the gestures. Like the whole where
mhm.
you can swipe down on it to bring down the notification panel. I find myself doing that a
Oh
lot when I'm just
yeah, that
holding the
is a
phone.
goodie. That is a
But at the
goodie.
same time, like There is some ways that some of the have done that where like
Hmm.
um I'm trying to think of the company because I mean LG was doing a weird thing where it was just on the lock screen swipe, but
Hmm.
some of the companies have done with the fingerprint where if you held on it and then you could swipe in different directions to open
Oh,
into
I
certain
yeah.
apps.
Like, let me see if I can do this. Like, oh, finger miss, and you just hold, and then it brings up. Oh, it didn't do it there, but like it brings up like a little like a context
Mm-hmm.
menu, and you can. Yeah, it's on here. I just wish that I could change it to what I want it to be. Like on the Xiaomi, and this might be because it's the Chinese variant. I can't change those shortcuts. Like I was trying to make one of them Google Pay because you can set up Google Pay on this, and I wanted to have a shortcut where I didn't have to worry about, well, if I unlock my phone and I go to toss it on the sensor, is it really gonna register the payment? So I wanted a shortcut to Google Pay, but you can't change those. So I don't necessarily like that. But again, I can't be super hyper critical in terms of like some of those software things because I got to keep in mind like this was not made for our market. This was made for a different market. So kind of keep myself in check. That's one of the biggest reasons I haven't like been, trying to talk pros and cons here, talk pros and cons because I'm still getting my head around it. Especially like I said, trying to keep in mind like there's gonna be those little things that you just can't get around, like not having Android Auto. I have to keep my poor OnePlus 10 Pro is just sitting in my glove box and it's just plugged in all the time, and that's what I use for Android Auto. So it's like you're always gonna have like those little things, but when that global model comes, my lord, it's a I'm gonna be waiting on Giz Top. I'm gonna be waiting on Giz Top, man. That's an instant buy, instant buy.
And I'm curious about something. I haven't thought about
Mm-hmm.
to do this before, but for people listening in the chat here, um, if you use an unlock method, if you have an unlock method, of course, you have your fingerprint or your face unlock, but your secondary method for like when a device restarts or, it requires, I am curious to know what people use if they use a pin or if they use like the swipe pattern or if they use a long password. So if you're
Mine is a
listening, can
pen.
let me know in the chat what you use. I know
I
what I use.
refuse. I refuse to be typing in a full blown password, man. I can't do it. It takes too long. Like if I'm messing up or something, I don't know. Like there's been times that I've been, had one too many drinks and I'm fumbling around with the fingerprint sensor. Not with this, but I'm fumbling around with the fingerprint sensor, and yeah, I got to put in that pin, and it's kind of tough. So I couldn't do. Yeah, I 100% could not do a whole elaborate password though. Yeah, nah, I couldn't do it.
That's one
Umar
thing
said he
with the
uses his
iPhone. I
pen.
immediately changed mine from the 6 to the 4 when they started doing the 6 digit. Because I was
Really?
like, well, because I always had it as a 4, so I didn't want to change it and then have to tell
Yeah.
people, like, hey, you need to use a different. Because my thing is, I set the pin and I have it, and I have certain
Hmm.
people that know it. Because if something were to happen to me, then they can get
You
into my
want them to be
device,
able to
right?
get
Like,
into
so
it.
they know
Yeah.
the pin. And if I ever change that, um, they know what it is, anyways. Because I
Hmm.
always, I always have a particular method I use for setting it. So they,
Hmm.
if it ever changes, which it shouldn't, but
Yeah.
the password, I never understood that. You're gonna sit there and type in like
I
57 characters if your
can't,
device
bro.
restarts.
I
And
can't
there's
do it.
what was it? There's like one device that I've used that didn't. You could turn off the. I'm trying to remember which company device I was using, where you could actually turn off the having to put your password in after a restart. I know it's not my Vivos
Oh
because every time,
wow. Yeah.
um,
No, I don't even know how I necessarily feel about that. I don't
like you
know.
could,
I'm
like you
just so
could
used
set
to
it to do
putting in the
that
pin when I
unless
do it.
unless you had powered it off yourself. So it was like when there's an update and
Oh,
it
okay.
restarts, but like if you
Okay. See,
went in and
that would be
restarted it,
useful.
or
That
you
would be
went in and
useful.
because then it's like, well, we know you're restarting it because of
Mhm.
maybe some security reasons, so we don't want to. But like if it was just automatic
That would be
restart,
useful.
um,
Yeah, that part would be useful. Like resetting after software updates, if you got to reboot your phone because something's not working right, like that part would be useful. But yeah, if I
did
like powered off myself or something, yeah.
have you ever been, or I guess, do you ever use the ability where like you could have your watch where the smart unlock where if it's paired via Bluetooth and you're like at home or whatever that it or
Hmm.
like even location being at home, that it disables your
Hmm.
lock stuff. Do you ever use that?
You talking about on my phone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to use it on. I don't use it on like my slabs just because it's just quick for me to just tap the fingerprint sensor and I'm in. But on my foldables, yes, yes, I always like to just because like when I'm most of the time when I'm home, I'm in a setting where I'm going to be using it unfolded with two hands, and I just want to unfold that bad boy and get right to what I'm doing. I don't want to have to unfold, wait for the face unlock, or unfold and then tap the fingerprint sensor or whatever. I just want to open it, keep it moving. So I use Bixby routines to set it up, so it knows like when I'm home and when I'm connected to my home Wi-Fi, it'll stay unlocked. And then as soon as I walk, go out the door or whatever, turns my passcode back on my lock screen.
With all like the geofencing stuff, Apple talks about, and you can
Mm-hmm.
set it like notification, like you can set it to like notify, and you can do all sorts of crazy some stuff with that. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
I even at one point had it set, it was on an Android device at the time, but I had it actually set where when I would leave for work, it would send a message to my girlfriend at the time, like, "Hey, babe, I'm headed to work." And then when I got to
Oh
work, it would send her
wow.
one like,
She
"Hey,
was
I'm here."
tracking
So
you.
no,
She
that
was
way,
tracking you,
and it
boy.
only between certain times, because that way if I went to lunch, it wouldn't
Yeah.
be like I'm on my way home, oh, I'm back at
Oh
work
yeah, that
because it
makes
thought,
sense. That makes
because it thought,
sense. That's wild,
but it
boy.
was just kind
She
of a
was
like,
tracking you,
so I
MPT.
didn't
She
have
was
to, well,
like
you know, Michigan winters,
Nah, I'm
ice and
giving you a
stuff,
hard
safety,
time.
but like
Yeah,
other than
I'm
that, there
giving
was
you a
like,
hard time. You're good.
I wonder how many people use that stuff, like the geofence stuff, and like for
Yeah.
like the
I'm gonna be
automatic.
honest. I never have a good instance of for me that would be good to have that. And I would have to obviously set it up beforehand. It's for like when I travel because I am terrible. I literally before I get on a plane, I always either talk to if my fiance is with me, I talk to my mom and I talk to one of her parents before we go and when we land. And I am terrible about remembering to let them know we made it afterwards. And there's been too many times where I've been traveling and I forget because I'm so wrapped up in trying to get my bag, trying to do this, trying to do that. And I forget. And my mom's like blowing up my phone, like, boy, you better answer this phone or I'm gonna go ballistic. So that I could, like I said, for the safety aspect, I absolutely 100% could see that. Because there are times like I could definitely say like it'll like I know about the time that my wife gets home. So if it gets, she normally gets home at 6. If it's like 6:30, 6:45, she's still not home, then I'm kind of like, okay, let me call her, make sure she's good or whatever. So, like I said, for safety, I 100% get it. I was just giving you a hard time.
Our we have the sync up drive in our car, so it tracks that stuff. But like also my
Oh,
wife has her Find
nice.
My enabled on her iPhone, so like if she
Mm-hmm.
were like in somebody else's vehicle and then she's like,
Mm-hmm.
I'll text you when I'm headed home, and same reason I can
Mm-hmm.
just check and be like, okay, she's fine. But
She's
what was
good.
really
She made
funny
it
with
in.
that is
Yeah.
I did the family sharing with
Okay.
one of our friends, and she went from like a Nord N200 or whatever to
Mm-hmm.
a 13 Pro Max, which of course is a huge, but
Oh,
like
snap.
so,
She snapped. She went
but
all
like
in.
but I like added her to
Yeah.
our stuff so that she had access to like Apple Music
Mm-hmm.
and that and like Apple TV Plus and that. But I didn't realize
Mm-hmm.
because she had location sharing enabled, it would share that to her too, or share hers to me too. So I told her, and she's like, "I
Oh,
don't care."
wow.
I'm
So
like,
you knew where she was at all
but I'm
times.
like,
That's
but I
hilarious.
was like, I
Oh,
probably should let
man.
her know so she doesn't like. But at the same time, the
Like
handy
get
thing about
creeped
that is
out
like
because that
the
could be
handy thing about
creepy.
that is if we were ever someplace like hanging out with her and her fiance and stuff, and she were to like leave her phone set somewhere, I can just go on mine and go
Mhm.
in it and ring it. And
You can
her
track it.
fiance has
Exactly.
an Android
Yeah, I feel
device,
like
so
there's
there would be
always
no method for anybody to.
oh,
So like
okay.
some of that, but I
Yeah,
do
he
wish
wouldn't
she
be able
could
to
be
get it.
more finite with that. Like I wish they
Like
had
more
more options
specific
of
about what you want and don't want.
like
I
okay,
agree. Like right now it's
only if
very
it's
much all or
lost, share
nothing.
the location, or
Hmm.
but like I can just any if it's shared, it shares it with pretty much everybody. But my last
Yeah,
question
it's very much all or nothing. Let's
for
go.
you, because we're gonna wrap it up so you can
Hmm.
get over to your, because I know you gotta roll on over to your thing here in a few minutes. Is
Yeah.
tech coming the last, I guess you would say, 4 month, where, yeah, 4 months of the year, September, October, November, December.
Ooh.
What are you looking forward to? And
Mhm.
are there any things of those, I guess, of what's coming out? Are there any devices that like you were looking forward
Mhm.
to, but maybe you're not now because like something else you've tried has kind of pushed you off
Oh,
from being,
yeah.
or are there ones that are kind of the opposite that like you weren't, but now
Mhm.
you really are?
Now you are because of what you like are experiencing now. So yeah, like you might as well just been calling it or whatever. Like people are gonna swear that we rehearsed these questions, but I swear y'all we haven't. But no, that's literally in the state that I'm at with the iPhone. I'm excited to like see it launch. It's always kind of exciting, right? So I'm excited to see it launch for those who are excited for it. I'm just personally not the most excited. And that's not to say I won't get it. I'm honestly, not sure. September is always a tough month because I have two of my three kids' birthdays in September. So we're always kind of strapped at that time for cash. So I don't know. We'll see. But the biggest reason why, and it's funny, I was talking to Barry about it earlier, is because like there's maybe one phone ever, like since I got it, that's really made me be like, I don't want to use my Pixel 6 Pro right now. Like that's normally like my bread and butter, my Mr. Reliable, the thing I go back to when I'm done reviewing something. And it's been this 12S Ultra. Like I'm rocking it. All I'm gonna say is Google, y'all better bring it. Y'all better bring it because it's gonna be between either Pixel 7 Pro or this Xiaomi 12S Ultra is what's gonna finish me off like for the year in terms of like what I'm gonna carry. I'm like I said, still looking forward to Pixel 7 Pro. Hoping that we get a Pixel Fold, man. If we can get that, that'll probably kill it in terms of anything being in my pocket. In all honesty, but like I said, next iPhone, I'm interested to see what they're doing. Finally, no notch. I was never a person that liked the notch, but I'm pretty excited to see what happens. I don't know if I'll be picking anything up though. But what about you? What are you excited about?
Um, so my wife has the regular iPhone 13 and I have the 13 Pro. And the neat thing about that is like every once in a while I'll just grab it
Mm-hmm.
and be like, "Hey, can I, to see like do I notice?" And yeah, I notice like being not quite as smooth every once in a while, but like as far as like performance,
Yeah.
app launching and stuff like that, it's pretty good. So, what I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking forward to and trying to decide, and this might be the first year in like forever
Mm-hmm.
because once like when the iPhone, basically I had an iPhone 4 and then I had the 6, and then the 6S series came out and I traded my 6 for the 6S Plus because it
Mm-hmm.
was like literally a week after I grabbed the 6 because I wasn't paying attention and didn't think about, and back then they weren't quite as
Oh
obvious about
wow.
their dates and stuff. So like, and I didn't know it was going to be available through my carrier like
It happens
immediately.
to the best of
So I
us.
got the 6S Plus, and then since then, it was that,
Mm-hmm.
and then the iPhone 10, and then 11 Pro Max, and it's always been like kind of the top for the most part up until the 13 series because I could
Same.
get the Pro and get all the camera features. So what I'm looking forward to is knowing
Mm-hmm.
the 14 larger version, whatever they're gonna call that. If
So
battery
whatever.
life on that does really well, and some of the stuff with that, I might go to a non-pro device just
Mm-hmm.
because of what I've been using my iPhone for because I use it for the
Oh
webcam and I
wow.
use it for like camera to record
Oh.
video and I use it for messaging. But apart from
Mm-hmm.
that, it's not like I'm doing a bunch of intensive gaming on it. I can edit videos and edit my photos just
That's
fine.
true.
So if it comes down to that, like if I can grab 256 or 512 gig and go from like my 13 Pro to
Mm-hmm.
like a 14 Max and like pay nothing or like a hundred
Mm-hmm.
bucks or whatever, like
I
little
mean,
bit on trade in because
it'd be
last
worth
year
it.
Best Buy did huge trade in. That's what I'm. Um, but it kind of depends on their trade in. But like you said, man, if
Yeah,
Pixel Fold, if that thing drops, I'm done. That's gonna be like the one device I'd be like all set because
bro.
like cameras,
And oh my
UI, like
gosh,
if they
like
get the UI right on that and they get like the split screen top to bottom, side to side, like all that like an edge panel type of thing. 12L having that like
bro,
the thing at the bottom, which we know is not like a Samsung only feature. That's like an
it's
actual
going
12L thing.
down.
I will be
Yeah, that's an actual built into 12L. Yeah. dude, I'm telling you, people ain't even gonna want to come to my channel. Like, all we want to talk about is that Pixel Fold.
But
Like,
watches,
bro,
I'm good with
I
my
don't know.
Classic
We'll
4.
see.
Like as far as what I'm seeing in
Okay.
battery life, it hasn't necessarily enticed me because of I get unusually high battery life on mine compared to like what other
Hmm.
people were getting with theirs,
Hmm.
and seeing it go from like some
Oh, that's
people that were
nice.
getting 2.5 days on this, like are getting, or there are people that were getting
Hmm.
like way better. There were actually a few people that are getting like maybe there are some people that were getting like a day and a half on this, and they're getting like two on the
Hmm.
new, and then there are some people that are getting like two
Oh,
and a
that's
half
not
on this,
even
and are
worth
getting
it,
like
John.
so like the bump up to me, like yeah, if I can use if
Yeah.
they still have a good deal, and like when my credits rolled through, because I'll have like 200 in credits, and then trade that if they're giving still like
Hmm.
240 for this. Paying like 50-60 bucks might be worth going to
Hmm.
the 5 Pro, and then just having like the more
That
updates and
would be
some of the,
worth the
but
better
at the same
battery
time, I
life.
don't see it getting any more updates than this because they're running the same processor and stuff. And then
Yeah, they
like
run
my
the same
Series 7
processor.
Apple Watch,
Yeah.
I don't see any. So for me, watches are just kind of like I'm not really enticed. Now if TicWatch drops like their next series and like
That's
does
what
some
I'm waiting
upgraded stuff,
for.
and like I love the dual display thing, um, that would be like that
Best
and
feature dog on a watch.
a Pixel Fold, especially like if the battery life is like
It'll be a
the
wrap.
Pixel 6 has been really good. I've been one of the
Like,
unusual people
man.
that like even on the 13 beta has been still holding up for me. I know some people had
Hmm.
some, so that's kind of what I'm looking
Nice.
at. It is mainly just like I want a one device that I can carry. Right now I'm carrying Fold,
Bro.
iPhone, Flip. Like well, of course I'm testing some
Oh,
stuff,
you
but like
carrying everything. Yeah.
sometimes when I
Man,
go
you
out the
carrying
door, I
everything.
just
I
grab
can't
my
carry that many.
Vivo just
Two is
because
my
I want like
max.
I need the bat. I don't want to like know that like I like the larger screen on the front and not having it. But like right now, I've just been carrying both.
Uh,
And like case wise, I'm still stuck using just the. So
mhm.
I'm looking forward to some better cases. Um, but
uh,
yeah, maybe AirPods Max
I got a
too, and like
couple too that
AirPods
I'm
Pro
on the left.
too, like in some like lossless stuff, but like
Oh,
audio
yeah,
side.
yeah.
Really, audio has been getting me excited. So, like, I have the Galaxy Buds Pro 2, and I love these things. I've been using some buds that
Hmm.
I can't talk about
I need to
yet.
give those a
So,
try.
I'm
Oh,
I
okay.
can't
I
wait for
see you.
those to drop. But like these have been really solid. Like AirPods Pro are like destroyed by these, in my opinion. Apart from call quality, that's the
Dang.
but like the
Apart from
audio
call, with like
pass through, the
transparency mode
comfort,
is.
the battery life, transparency, like it's non-digital, which they had
Oh, I
like a
might need to
really
grab
horrible
them.
issue with the way that they fit. It took me a minute to realize like most of my earbuds I'm used to
Hmm.
putting in and twist. You just slide them in, and like as long as that
Yeah.
part is facing up, you just and they're good
Oh,
to go.
I need to try those.
So
I need to try those because I right now I'm rocking the WFX4s and I love those. So I need to give those Galaxy Buds a try for
and
sure.
charging, they got the wireless charging, and they got all sorts of. Um, they've been great for me. I don't know. Some people don't like them. Some
But
people do. But with that being said, thank you, Ike, for joining us, for
oh
letting us get behind your
no,
mind a
thank
little
you for
bit.
having me, man. Thank you.
For anybody listening and watching, the link to your channel is in the description down below, and you
Thank
can
you.
find
Thank
him
you.
with the same name if you're on social media stuff. Um, and go check out his
Yep.
channel. He's gonna be live like in a matter of seconds, most likely, hopefully. Um, enjoy the
Yeah, I'll be live
conversation
like
over there
right after.
tonight, and everybody go head off his way. And I will see you all episode 4 next week. Thank you again, sir. Have a good night, everybody.